Hey, everybody, it's Mark Rawson. I'd like to welcome you to another night of Spiritual Connections Radio. As you know, we're on every Thursday from 9:30 to 10:30 p.m., always bringing you great guests from around the world, authors and famous spiritual teachers and everything. As always, if you miss any part of the show or if you want to find out more about our shows, go to our website, which is spiritualconnectionsradio.com. And with that, I'm going to bring Pam on. Pam, are you out there?
I sure am. Hi, everyone. Hello, Mark. Good
Hello.
evening. Hi.
Well, so we were kind
tonight,
of talking
go ahead.
I was going to say we were talking a little bit about, before the show started, that I'm in a move. Everybody knows that I was kind of up in Pennsylvania. Now I'm heading towards living down in Orlando, Florida. Right now I'm broadcasting live from South Carolina.
Well, that's wonderful. You're on a mission, a south mission.
Yeah, the mission is to get away from the snow.
I don't blame you for that.
All right, go ahead.
It's beautiful down here. Tonight we have the author of a book called Dancing on a Stamp. And Dancing on a Stamp looks to be a lovely, lovely book. The brief description is it discloses startling new revelations about who we are, our purpose in life, and what happens to us after death. The name of the author is Garnet Schulhauser, who's with us tonight. Welcome, Mr. Schulhauser, or Garnet.
Hi, call me Garnet. Hi, Pam and Mark. Nice to be here.
Hi, Garnet. Nice to be here with you as well. It's a real honor to have you on the show.
I'm honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's great having you on the show. I had originally come across his work because one of the shows that I like to listen to is something called Veritas Radio, which is an internet-based radio show. And I was going through and I was listening to a bunch of the different speakers and people that were being interviewed on that show, and I came across his work, and I was kind of talking about this before you actually got on the line today, Pam, and I was telling him that since I've been driving in the car for the last couple of days, his interview on that show was 3 hours, and I spent the last 2 days listening to his interview over and over again, just listening to all the different things he talked about. So we're going to kind of get into that in a minute. So, with that, why don't you go ahead and tell us, what it was that you were doing for work and how all this came together, because I just love the story.
Okay, sure, no problem. Well, the story about that leads to my book began in May of 2007. I was practicing corporate law in Calgary, in Canada, with a large law firm which I'd been with for about 19 years at that point. I spent a total of 34 years practicing law before I retired in 2008. Anyway, I was just at my office this sunny afternoon in May, and I decided I needed to get some fresh air. So I went down, took the elevator down to the street, and there was a pedestrian mall in front of our office building, and so I just went for a stroll on this mall. It was a nice sunny afternoon. I'm just walking along, and like I had, other afternoons before, and not paying attention too much to what's going on around me, when all of a sudden a homeless man jumps out in front of me, just sort of like, it's almost like he came out of nowhere. And he looked like a typical homeless man. He had long, stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty clothes, and it looked like he'd been sleeping in the street for weeks. And I had run into these people on the street before, and my usual practice was to make a quick sidestep and go around them, because more often than not they were panhandling for money. But this guy was different, and what kept me there was the fact that he had amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes that to me they sort of reminded me of two little blue stars that were just shining brilliantly. And those eyes sort of stopped me there, and his gaze was sort of doing two things at the same time. The first thing was his gaze sort of penetrated right into me, right down to the depths of my soul, and I felt and sensed like he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever done in my life, and I felt that he knew all my hopes and aspirations and all my fears and anxieties and all my deepest and darkest secrets. And I don't know how he knew this, because I'd never met him before, but I just sensed it intuitively that he knew all this. And so I was standing there feeling a little naked and exposed to this stranger who I'd never met before. And the reason I didn't sort of run and bolt was because at the same time his eyes were sending forth this wave and gush of pure, unconditional love. And that was just infusing my whole body with an amazing feeling of peace and love and security. It's a feeling I'd never felt before. It was an amazing feeling, and I just enjoyed basking in his gaze. And I was like I was caught in a time warp almost. I don't know how long I stood there, and I frankly didn't care how long I stood there because it was such a wonderful feeling. And then all of a sudden he broke my reverie by saying, "Why are you here?" And then he promptly just disappeared into a nearby store. Well, as soon as I collected my wits, I went into the store to try to find this guy. And there was only one entrance and one exit, and I went in it, and the store was fairly open, and I could sort of see out through all the aisles, and I went up and down, and he was nowhere to be seen. He just disappeared. So I left, and I walked up and down the mall a bit to see if he was maybe outside. Couldn't find him. So I gave up and headed back to my office with my head sort of all in a swirl, trying to figure out who was this guy, why did he stop me, how did he get such amazing eyes, and what did he want from me? And so I walked back to the office, and later that night, that evening, I kept on thinking about this encounter, and I just knew that I had to go back the next day to see if I can find him, because he was just such a very different character, and there was something very compelling about him that I needed to find out who he was. So the very next day, in the afternoon, exactly the same time, I walked back out onto the pedestrian mall and walked up and down trying to find this guy. Well, after about 20 minutes, I was beginning to lose hope when all of a sudden I spotted him sitting on a bench all by himself. So I walked over to him and I said to him, "You stopped me yesterday. Why did you stop me, and who are you?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you, and I'm here to help you on your journey and to answer your questions." Well, despite the fact that I was still getting this gush of unconditional love coming from this guy that day, my lawyer brain then kicked in, and I became a little skeptical. And I said to him, "Well, how do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because look at you. You look like you've been sleeping in the street for weeks, and you smell like a dead fish. So how are you going to help me?" Well, he just gave me a big smile, and he said, "You know, looks can be deceiving, because you look like you're a successful lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You know, you can turn around, go back to your office, and see if you can find the answers you're seeking in all those emails sitting there and waiting for you on your computer. Or you can sit down here and have a chat with me and take a chance. And after all, what do you have to lose by sitting down and talking to me for a while?" Well, my intuition then kicked in, thankfully, and I just knew that I had to sit down and talk to this guy for a while and find out who he was. So I did. And that's how our conversation began. And our conversation went on for several months after that, off and on, not on a continual basis. And he let on early on in our conversation that he was actually one of my spirit guides disguised as a homeless man. And he told me that I was the only one who could actually see him as the homeless man, and no one else could. So if anybody had been walking by the bench that day when I was talking to him, they would have seen me sitting there on the bench talking to myself, or apparently talking to myself. And after the first 3 visits, he no longer appeared to me in physical form as a homeless man. He just started talking to me as a voice in my head. And that's how the rest of our conversations were carried on. And when I asked him why he initially appeared as a homeless man, he said, well, it was his way of sort of easing me into the conversation, because if he had just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I might have thought I was going crazy and probably would have tried to ignore it or gone to see a psychiatrist or whatever. So this was his way of sort of easing me into it. And it actually did work, because once I started hearing his voice in my head, I knew it was him because of when he appeared to me as a homeless man. So it was really quite an amazing conversation. That's how it all began.
Yeah. So it's just an amazing story. I mean, for a lot of us spiritual people out there, I think we would actually love to see the same thing happen, and that is to actually see a visual representation of our actual spirit guide show up in our lives and have a sit down, you know. I guess I want to kind of move forward because I want to really get into some questions about some topics and stuff and some advanced spiritual topics. But before we get to that, let me just kind of lead you into this so you can kind of answer this. You know, we know that eventually the information that your guide shared with you led you to writing the book Dancing on a Stamp, and of course the link for that is, and for your websites and everything is up on the Spiritual Connections website, and we'll give those out in a little bit. So, you know, the question I have for you is, I know from listening to your interview, I know you come from a very religious background, and a lot of the things that happened with your knowledge and sharing with Albert kind of cleared what you consider to be a lot of transitional stuff that you needed to know as you were growing, especially coming from that very religious background. So to lay the foundation for that, can you just kind of give very quickly the 5 basic questions that most people ask that you learned from Albert, you know, such as heaven and hell and, you know, those type of general questions that most people have?
Yeah, well, and that was, I guess, the reason that Albert appeared in my life, because he was there to answer questions that I had been asking for most of my adult life. And I've been asking these because I had, as you mentioned, been raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family, very religious, and so I had learned all the dogmas that the Catholic Church taught me, and I knew all the answers that they had for my questions, but I didn't like their answers, and I basically sort of tossed out a lot of their beliefs because they just didn't ring true to me. And so that transition happened from like in my 20s and my 30s, where I sort of dismissed a lot of those beliefs and a lot of their dogmas, and I then cast about to find something else to replace it, another belief system. And so I kept on asking myself these questions, like typically, as I say in my book, I would stare at my mug Monday morning when I was shaving, and I would ask all the questions that we all ask, like, who am I? Why am I here? You know, where did I come from before this? What am I supposed to accomplish in my life? You know, did God put me here, or did I come here through some random act of the universe? And what happens to me after I die? Do I go to heaven or hell, or do I disappear into, or cease to exist, disappearing into nothingness? Those are all sort of very basic, big life questions, I think, that we all ask at one point or another. And so Albert showed up to answer those questions, and plus a lot of others that arose, because every time he would answer one of my questions, I would think of 2 or 3 other questions sort of based upon what he had answered. So the conversation sort of kept on rolling along. And the answers he gave me I just found to be very insightful. They really rang true in my heart, and I just knew that what he was telling me was the right answers, and I felt very, very comfortable with them.
So, you know, just to kind of finish off that conversation before we move forward, can you kind of give the answers to those? Because I know that's something you generally do on the shows.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, who are we? Well, Albert says we are all eternal souls that live forever, and that we were created by the source, or some people refer to as the creator, or all that is, or God, depending on, you know, whatever name you want to use. It doesn't really matter. But we're all created by the source, and we're beings of energy, basically, that spun out from the source like a spark of light from the central sun. And so the source created us, and we were sent out to go out and explore everything in the universe that the source had created. And we're all still part of the source, and so we're all connected to the source, and we're connected to each other. So that's basically who we are. Why are we here? Well, the simple answer is that before we incarnated on Earth, we were all living in the spirit side, or some people call it home, or the other side, or heaven. A beautiful, wonderful place where there's no negative emotions, and we don't have physical bodies, and it's just a wonderful place to exist. And on the spirit side, we can learn and acquire knowledge, but it's kind of like book knowledge, and we incarnate on the denser planes like Earth in order to experience things sort of on a first-hand manner, by actually incarnating into a physical body. So why are we here? We came here because we chose, when we were on the spirit side, we chose to incarnate into a human body so that we could experience things and learn lessons that we needed for our evolution, so that we could grow and advance as souls. And so we're here because we chose to, come and experience what Earth has to offer so that we can complete our book knowledge, so to speak, that we have on the spirit side with practical first-hand experiences in the physical body here. And before we came here, we actually each prepared a life plan, which set out sort of the blueprint for the life that we hope to live when we incarnated on Earth. And our life plans would set out things like, obviously, who our parents are, our names, where we're going to be born, the first language we learn, the schools we go to, and then the identities of our parents and our siblings and relatives and friends and spouses. So it's sort of a broad outline, but they don't outline every sort of single detail in our lives, because what happens is that when we get on Earth and when we're incarnated in a human, we are not allowed to remember what's in our life plans. And because we have free will to take actions and make decisions, what happens when we get here is that we often stray off the course we intended because we don't really remember what it was, and we're ruled to some degree by our minds and our free will actions, and our mind doesn't know what's in our life plans, and so it'll take actions and make decisions based upon what it thinks is the right course of action, and it may not be. So quite often we stray off our life plans, but in the end result it doesn't matter, because no matter what sort of life you lead, what route you take when you're here, at the end of the day, when your physical body dies, you go back to the spirit side. So the life on Earth is an experience to help us grow and evolve, and if we don't follow our life plan, exactly, that's no big deal, because we can come back and incarnate here as many times as we like until we feel that we've learned and experienced everything we need. So that's why we're here. In terms of what happens to us after we die, well, I think I touched on it a bit. Everyone goes back, every soul goes back to the spirit side, no exceptions. So good people go there, bad people go there. It means, which is hard to take for some people, that murderers and terrorists go back to the spirit side when they die the same as everyone else. And that's because there's no other place to go. We're all here on a journey. It's like being in a play on Earth. If we're all here in this play, and when the curtain goes down, we all go back to the same place. And so that's what happens after we die. Is there a heaven and a hell? Well, heaven is, the spirit side could be called heaven. It's a wonderful place, and so if you like, there is a heaven, which is the spirit side. Is there a hell? No. Albert says that hell is just a fiction created by religions to help control the masses. They do that through guilt and fear. And the fear part, of course, is if you don't follow God's rules and listen to the spiritual leaders, religious leaders rather, then when you die, you'll go to an awful place called hell. So it's just a control feature. But he says, no, there is no hell. There's only a spirit side, and we all go back to the same place. So those are sort of the basic answers that he gave me, which I quite liked. And then there was a lot of other questions that I posed to him, but that's sort of the framework for what Albert told me about the big questions in life.
Oh, that's amazing.
Has Albert ever... Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, I was going to say that's an amazing summary. Thank you for doing that, because I really wanted to move the whole audience to that level, and now we'll just kind of jump from there. Go ahead, Pam.
I was going to ask if Albert had ever talked to you, Garnet, about reincarnation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the sort of one of the fundamental tenets of his revelations, is that everyone on Earth, came here from the other side, incarnated, and we can continue to incarnate or reincarnate, if you will, as many times as you need or want to. So it's quite common for humans to have several hundred incarnations on Earth. It depends on what it is they want to experience, and it also depends on how quick they can learn the lessons they're supposed to learn while they're here. So what happens generally, as he says, is that you set out things that you want to accomplish in your life plan, and then if you don't hit many of the points when in one life, well then when you get back to the other side, you will basically say, well, okay, there's some things I still need to learn, so I'll choose another life and I'll go back and reincarnate into that life, and you sort of keep on going until you as a soul feel comfortable that you've learned everything that you should learn or that you want to learn from incarnating on Earth. And for some souls that may be a lot less than others. Everyone goes at a different pace, and everyone has actually a different agenda for their advancement. And there's no there's no timetables or deadlines for how quickly you evolve, and everyone does it sort of at a different pace. So it's entirely up to you, and no one makes you come back, Pam. You know, no one forces you to reincarnate. So even if you had a life where you screwed things up pretty royally, no one says, okay, well now you've got to go back and make amends. It's sort of entirely up to you. But everyone has sort of a moral imperative to want to try to do their best and evolve, and so we all sort of get ourselves up for the next life and say, well, you know, I'm not happy with what I did there, so I'm going to go back and try again. And so it's our own doing that sends us back there. It's not God or somebody else who says you got to go back because you messed up. So yeah, reincarnation is a very fundamental part, and not only reincarnation on Earth, Pam, but we can actually incarnate into life forms on other planets. And there's many millions of other planets in the universe that have, you know, life forms, many of them very different, and we can incarnate into any of those if we want. In fact, some of us who are not presently on Earth may well have incarnated into other life forms before coming to Earth. And you don't remember any of those. You will remember them when you die and you go back to the spirit side, but right now you don't remember your past lives on Earth or anywhere else. And that's just part of the whole scheme, because if you remembered your past lives on Earth, it would be such a burden. I mean, imagine if you had 200 lives before this. You know, you'd be burdened with the memories of all those lives, and just think about you'd be thinking about the good things and the bad things that happened to you, and it would be way too distracting for you in this life. So to make this life sort of easier and let you be more focused, you just remember this life, and that's it, and you remember all the other ones when you get back to the spirit side.
I see. So what you're telling me, if I can sum this up as far as the reason we come back, it's like reading a book. As an example, you read the book, you have the information on a conceptual level, but you've never experienced it. You can read a tour guide book of Colorado, for example, but if you've never been to Colorado, it's very different because the experience isn't there. It's just a conceptual experience. Where when you're in the spirit world, it seems that you get the information, but it's still very conceptual. The impulse to incarnate into third dimensional reality is based on this idea of moving into the experience of it. Am I right?
You said that so nicely, Pam. Maybe I'd be able to quote you in one of my books. You did it so well. No, that's exactly it. Your example
Good.
of reading a tour guide about Colorado, you sort of have conceptual or book knowledge about Colorado, but you don't really know what Colorado's like until you actually travel there and experience it. And that's exactly the same way. On the spirit side, you can learn about life on Earth, and you can watch the humans and the people go through their everyday actions, and you can watch when their negative emotions get out of control, and when there's injury and conflict and wars and that sort of thing. But you don't really know what that's like. Like in the spirit side, there are no negative emotions, so you don't really know what hate or anger or fear or jealousy or guilt are, because they don't exist there. But you can see how those emotions on humans and Earth, cause all kinds of problems. So you decide as a soul that I really want to incarnate as a human, so I can experience these things firsthand, and then that will complete my knowledge of negative emotions and physical conditions on Earth. So that's exactly why souls decide to incarnate on Earth. Yeah, it's a learning experience.
Wonderful.
That's really good.
Now, I have another question. Go ahead.
Can you tell me, based on all the different things you've learned from Albert, what has been the one thing that you've learned that really had the most impact on you?
Well, probably the most impact on me was just the reassurance that when I die, I'm going to continue to exist in the form of my soul and my spirit, and that's sort of the big question. I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's always sort of a frightening thought that when I die, that everything just stops, it ceases, and I disappear into nothingness, as I said. That was always a frightening concern. Of course, the Catholic Church, when I was a kid, always said, well, yeah, your soul survives, but you go to a very nice place called heaven if you've been good, and if you're not, you go to a terrible place called hell, which is also quite frightening, because to think of burning in fires forever was quite a daunting thought. So anyway, the confirmation from Albert is that yes, we're eternal souls and we survive our physical death, and in fact we survive everything. We just exist forever. Was to me very, very comforting. It had a great impact. The thing that's sort of in terms of impact that surprised me the most about what Albert told me was that he said that our souls here choose when they want to exit their physical incarnations, and so there are no deaths by accident on Earth. Even though they may seem accidental, so some people get killed in a car accident, wasn't an accident really. The souls of the people killed in the accident chose that time to exit this incarnation, which seems quite amazing because you see everywhere you see all kinds of plane crashes and car accidents and people falling down and dying and falling off of bridges. Seems very accidental. But it was intentional on the part of that person's soul. And of course, your human mind, it doesn't know what your soul intends in terms of when it wants to exit, but your soul certainly does. And in fact, when you prepare your life plan, every soul will have several exit points, which would be pre-planned points where they can sort of end the incarnation and get back to the spirit side. And so your soul chooses which one of those it wants to use, or it could even change them as your life progresses, because you can change your life plan after you're born. So that was sort of a big surprise to me. So when people say a married couple has one of their children killed tragically at a young age, the natural reaction for them is to shake their fist angrily at God and say, "Why did you do this?" Well, it wasn't God who did it. It was the child's soul who decided it was time to leave. As difficult as that may seem, and that child's soul is now happily living on the spirit side, and they will get back together again when they cross over themselves. So that's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow, but it's just the way it works according to Albert. And so one of the things I said to Albert then was, well, you have all these people on Earth running around, exercising their free will and not knowing what is in their life plans. And so sooner or later, there's going to be some conflicts where, either through your actions or the actions of somebody else on the street or on the freeway or at work, that could cause some event to happen that would cause you to end your physical life here on Earth before your soul wanted to. And he said, well, no, it doesn't happen because everyone has something very magical called guardian angels. And these guardian angels, their job is to make sure that events don't happen sort of accidentally on Earth that might cause you to have a premature death, and they will actually physically intervene if necessary to prevent that from happening. So that's why your soul ultimately has the final say as to when they want to leave. And of course, as I say, your mind doesn't know what your soul's planning, but your soul knows exactly what it's doing, and so you will exit here when your soul's ready to go.
That's perfect. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. I want to let everybody know that you're listening to Spiritual Connections Radio, and you can find us on the internet at spiritualconnectionsradio.com. If you missed any part of this show, you can get it in the replays later after the show is over. I want to give out a couple different websites. The first is for the website, you can go to www.dancingonastamp.com, or you can find them on Facebook at Dancing on a Stamp. And we also have a link YouTube for, and I'm going to spell this out, GarnetSchulhauser. And with that, go ahead, Pam. Pam?
Oh, sorry, I was taking a drink of water. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Let's talk about the other side for a minute, the spirit side. I've done a lot of readings, and I've spent a lot of time on that side, talking to people that have passed on, talking to spirit guides, I do this all the time. And one of the things, some of the information that I received is that once you're in the spirit world on the other side, that there is there is separations between souls based on the vibrations, how fast or slow they're moving, like a serial killer, somebody that was really on the evil side isn't mixed in with just everybody. It seems like there are, you talk to someone that is really light and really feeling wonderful, and they just don't even have any awareness of those lower souls. Not to say that they're not in the same area or the same world even, but that the vibration is such where it's the vibration separates them. The emotion itself separates them. The concept of love and hate separates the souls. And at least that's been my experience, and that's what people have told me. Do you have any input in that area?
Not directly from Albert. What Albert did say was that, when you're on the spirit side, even though you're all part of the source and you're all connected to each other, you do have different energy sort of signature vibrations, so to speak, so that people, so that souls can tell one soul from another. That's quite apparent. Like you don't all merge together into one big globe. So you have your individual characteristics, your individual memories, from all your experiences. So you are individual aspects of the source, so to speak, and you have your own energy signatures that make you recognizable to other people. But in terms of, according to Albert, he said that there aren't, no matter what you did on Earth, you don't sort of carry forward to the spirit side your hate or your anger or your guilt or your anything else, because the negative emotions just aren't there. So that was his take on it, was that you don't sort of carry forward this stuff into the next world. And some of the people who have maybe had a tough life, who maybe were murderers, sometimes they'll need some special sort of what he called cocooning, where some of the other souls will sort of wrap their arms around them and counsel them and try to comfort them during the early transition, because sometimes it's more difficult for those people to make that transition than for the rest of us. And so that happens sometimes, but it doesn't last for a long time, and then eventually you come out of the sort of the cocoon and you move in with everyone else. But so anyway, that's what Albert told me, and there aren't any sort of what he said was that there are souls who are at different levels of evolution, for sure.
Right.
But they're all considered to be equal. Like it's not like the higher soul superior to the lower soul. They're all kind of equal, but we all have different rates of evolution, different paces of growth, and that's noticeable. But it's not in the sense of the high people don't condescend or sneer at the souls that are at a lower level of evolution. Doesn't work that way.
No, I never thought that.
I'm sorry?
I said I never thought that you had snobbery on the spirit world.
Yeah, no, there isn't.
I think so the next question I have is regarding the book Dancing on a Stamp. For people who haven't read it, how did you take the information that Albert gave you? How did you organize it in that book?
Well, I organized it. It was based on a series of conversations, but I organized it sort of in a sort of a logical, what I thought was a logical fashion, to sort of start from the basic questions and sort of move forward past there. And my conversations with Albert were often sort of we would jump around a bit, and then we'd come back another day to the same topics again. So in my book, I organized all of our conversations about a like topic is in one place, and then the same thing for another one. So it's easier for the reader. So it's not a verbatim transcript of our conversations, not by any stretch. So I had to sort of organize it, but it was basically it's in the form of a Q&A. So I would ask a question to Albert in the book, and then he'd respond, and I'd ask another question. So that's more or less how the book was set up, except for a few places like Chapter 5, where I talk about my growing up and my religious background and some of the funny and weird things that happened when I was in the church, and that's just sort of a bit of a memoir. But the rest of it is sort of a Q&A with Albert.
Go ahead.
Is that your question, Mark, or did I miss your point?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question, Garnet, about Albert when you first met him. prior to that, you've had a very Catholic background. It would seem to me that after you first met Albert and he took off and went into the store and then he disappeared, you couldn't find him. Did the thought ever occur to you that perhaps he was an angel? Have you ever touched him? Was he solid?
I didn't touch him at the first meeting, so I didn't know whether he was or not. But after in our second meeting, I actually did touch him, and he felt very solid to me. So he felt like a real person. But in answer to your question, no. When I didn't know who he was. I knew he was a very different and special kind of guy. It didn't occur to me that he might be an angel or a guide or anything like that. I just didn't know who he was, and I was very curious to find out. But then when he told me that he was one of my spirit guides, then I wasn't terribly surprised because I knew there was something special about him. And the way he answered my questions and the way he spoke clearly, validated him in my eyes that he was one of my spirit guides, and I was having a very special conversation with this guy who was living on the spirit side. So initially I didn't think he was an angel, but now I am very clearly convinced he is one of my spirit guides.
I see. So tell me about spirit guides, if you know. Did Albert ever talk to you about spirit guides? Do you know anything about them?
Well, Ben, I did ask him. He said that spirit guides are souls who are currently on the spirit side, and he said that every one of us has 2 or 3 spirit guides throughout our life. And they will often change, Pam, as we go through our life because our needs change here on Earth. And the spirit guides are there basically like our coaches. And they themselves have likely had a number of incarnations on Earth, so they sort of know what we're going through. And they're there to sort of coach us as we move through life and try to steer us onto the right path, which is the path that we had hoped to follow in our life plans before we were born. And so their challenge is to try to influence us without sort of direct communication, and the conversations I've had with Albert are very unusual in the sense that generally doesn't happen. And in fact, my conversations with Albert aren't really. Albert doesn't give me sort of personal advice about things to do. He says that's something that I'll have to figure out myself by listening to my other guides. His conversations with me were for the direct purpose of having me write my book so that other people could hear what he had to say. So for most of us, our spirit guides are giving us guidance and messages. It's like intuitive thoughts and flashes, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, coincidental events, synchronicities. Those are all things that they send our way for the purpose of helping us decide which fork to take when you come to a fork in the road. And the problem that most of us have is that we don't hear them because our minds are just cluttered up with all kinds of other thoughts about what I did yesterday and last week and what I'm doing tomorrow and next month. And our minds are constantly churning through all these thoughts. And it's very easy for us to miss what our spirit guides are sending us. And so the challenge for us is to try to slow our minds down, quiet our minds through meditation or whatever, so that we can hear these messages, hear them and understand them and act on them. And for a lot of us, we just miss so many of them and we go off course. But our guides are used to that and they keep on sending it. They don't give up. They keep on sending messages and they try to coax us back onto the path if we get off course. And that's their job. And every night, when every one of us goes to sleep, our souls, our spirits actually leave our physical bodies temporarily and go back to the spirit side. And there, our souls can huddle with our spirit guides and converse and assess what we've done so far and figure out where we want to go and do we need to make any changes to our life plans. So we have this consultation every night with our guides, come back to our bodies in the morning. We don't remember any of that, but that does happen. And so our guides are very much a big part of our lives, even though most of us aren't aware of it. And from time to time, one or more of your guides will leave and another one will come in because they have experience or expertise in an area that you happen to be plowing through in your life at that stage. So they do change, but everyone has 2 or 3, Pam. You do and Mark does, and I have 2 others who Albert would not disclose their identities, but I know that they're there helping me as well. And that's their job, and they actually love their job. They love doing that.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
So Mark,
Can you,
go ahead.
I know I know where you were talking earlier about the fact that you have a second book that's in the works. Is it got the same organization as the first one? Is it just continuation of knowledge that you've achieved from Albert?
No, actually, the format is a bit. The organization is a bit different, and that was deliberate because when I was starting to write my second book, Albert said that the format and organization for the second book should be different than the first. So the second book is not a Q&A. And I'll tell you just a bit about what's in the second book, but I don't want to disclose too many of the details. In the second book, how that originates is that, as opposed to the first book where I would sit quietly when I wanted to talk to Albert, and I would say in my head, hello, Albert, are you there? And he would answer back as a voice in my head. In the second book, I hadn't heard from Albert for a few weeks, and I was beginning to think maybe he had gone AWOL. And then all of a sudden, one night, I'm sleeping at night in my bed, and I hear a noise coming from the doorway, and I sort of sit up, and I hear the noise again, and then I start to make out a shimmering image in the doorway, and as the image sort of comes a little closer and hits the foot of my bed, I could see it's Albert as the homeless man. And Albert had come to me, and what he wanted me to do was to take my astral body, take me on a tour of other parts of the universe and other parts of Earth and the spirit side, to show me things that I could write about in my second book. So he basically took me by the arm, and we went, and basically it was my astral body popping out of my body, and I looked back and my physical body was still laying in bed, and he took me from there, up through the roof, through the clouds, and onto a number of adventures, including some of the places on the spirit side, other places on Earth, and other planets in the universe. And every place he took me to visit, there was a message for me or for all humanity in it, and that's what's disclosed in my second book. And so that's the structure of the second book. Although I do ask Albert some questions, it's not sort of a strict Q&A format as it was in the first book.
Wow, that's powerful. That's like a spiritual travel book.
It is sort of in a way, except it's not all fun, Mark. It's not just sort of fun and larks. There's some very heavy messages, spiritual messages in terms of what I see in my travels, which is set out in my book, and it's so hopefully it's something that people would want to read. I can tell you the title for my second book. It's called Dancing Forever with Spirit.
Wow. So I assume if we go to dancingonastamp.com that you'll be announcing the new book there.
Oh, yes, yeah. On my webpage and my Facebook page, I'll be giving plenty of advanced notice about when it will be available to be purchased. Yeah, for sure. And as I said, I expect that the earliest would be sometime this summer or early fall for it to get out.
Wow, I'm really excited. I want that book right now. Well, this will give everybody a chance to go out and pick up the other book. The other book is incredible also. So that's Dancing on a Stamp, and you can find out more about that at dancingonastamp.com. Go ahead, Pam.
I have a very weird question, and I've asked myself a few times whether I should ask you, but I'm just going to go ahead. Years ago, I went back when I was in high school, a long, long time ago. I read a book about, I actually think it was called The Cat People. And The Cat People was actually about, it's supposed to be a channeled book from a planet whose primary species, instead of humans, were cats. And then years later, I'm trying to remember the name of the author, the woman that wrote Earth, a Living Library. It's a book called Earth, a Living Library. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember her name. Anyway, she wrote this book saying that these extraterrestrials, the people from other planets, were using Earth as the place where their species, whatever planet they were on and whatever species that developed as the primary life form on that planet were planted here on Earth to make this place like a library where people could come, or other planets could come and study all of the species from all of the universe. Now, I think that's a pretty wild concept, except when you look at Egyptian mythology and Egyptian hieroglyphs and Egyptian history, it seems pretty clear that there are lots of gods with heads of different animals and that kind of thing. And if you look closely, a lot of that fits. So it's something that I've always put on the back burner as, well, okay, maybe. But I wondered if you had any insight to that.
Yeah, I did discuss the idea of alien civilizations visiting Earth with Albert. He said the universe is just full of millions of different kinds of life forms and civilizations, and some of them are less advanced than humans, and some of them are way more advanced. Some of these advanced civilizations have been visiting Earth for, centuries and centuries, and they're faster than light spacecraft. And they take all kinds of forms. I mean, some are humanoid and some of them, he didn't mention cats specifically, but I'm sure there could be cats, and there could be all kinds of different forms. And they visited Earth. Sometimes they're very discreet and nobody notices them at all. Other times they actually do physically appear. And so in a lot of the historical references, like you mentioned, the Egyptian cats, and a lot of references in the Bible to angels coming down and doing various miracles, for the most part, it was probably some of these advanced civilizations appearing and doing things on Earth. And so that's probably where a lot of these records come from. But he said that you're right in the sense that life on Earth was seeded initially by some of these extraterrestrials, the ETs. And they seeded life from different planets that had life. As soon as Earth was ready to sort of harbor life, they seeded it and started slowly with primitive life forms, and then gradually moved up. And so humans, in fact, were seeded as well. And so that's where the life originated. So everything you see on Earth, in one form or another, probably came from somewhere else in the universe after being seeded by the ETs. And so, yeah, I mean, I think the fact that there is a planet with the major species being cat-like is of no surprise. And I didn't ask Albert about that. He didn't mention it, but I'm sure I can, next time I talk to him, I will. But I'm sure there are planets just like that, and that's probably maybe where the Egyptians got their ideas of gods that had like cat-like features. So I think it's good you asked that question, Pam, and I hope I give you some insight into your question. And at some point, I'm going to ask Albert for more information on what the role of the ETs on Earth. In fact, I have more information that will be in my second book about the ETs and their role in Earth's history. So some of your other questions may be answered in my second book.
Wow, great! Thank you so much.
I guess just to finish up the last question for the call, there's something that I want to see if Albert has talked to you about, and I'll give myself as an example because it's kind of the lesson I'm going through in my life right now. There is the general understanding that we come here, we're here to do soul growth, we're here making our decisions, we're having this expansion. We have our guides that are kind of keeping us on our contract or our life plan and stuff like that. And, then there's this other camp that we kind of studied under somebody called Tasha Silver, where we were talking about the idea that for everything in life, there is something that the divine has kind of lined up for us. And if we can just kind of surrender and let go and just kind of follow divine guidance and the signs that we get from divine guidance, that our life can be a lot easier. And, for me, I know this is an exact statement to make, but for me it seems like, well, if you're kind of going with the divine flow, are you really doing the expansion and the growth that you're supposed to be doing under your contract? And I was just wondering if you had any knowledge about that from Albert.
Well, I think that what they mean by the divine flow is it may be synonymous with following your life plan. And I think that doesn't mean that you're missing things that you wanted to, because you prepare your life plan, Mark, to encounter experiences and people and events and things that will help you with your evolution. And so you don't, according to Albert, you don't do a life plan to set out sort of a cushy, easy, flowing life on Earth, because, like, what's the point? You're not going to be learning anything. So we all design our life plans with various degrees of difficulties and lessons to be learned. And it depends on how much experience we have on the Earth plane, and how fast we want to learn. And to stop us sort of from having too difficult of a life plan, all of our life plans are reviewed by a council of wise ones, sort of very evolved souls who will sort of give some guidance about maybe to make sure that we don't bite off more than we can chew in our life plans. But our life plans clearly are designed to go through some of the tough things that we go through in life, because those are learning experiences. So if following the divine flow is following your life plan, then it's sort of the right path, but it's not an easy path necessarily. So I'm not quite sure what they mean by the divine flow, but following your life plan, according to Albert, it's not a walk in the park, because we don't design our life plans to be very easy on purpose.
Mm. With that, I guess we talked earlier about what was your big aha moments from your knowledge that you achieved from working with Albert and writing books, but to kind of look at it from a different angle as far as your life experience now as it's unfolded, what do you consider to be one of your biggest lessons in life?
The biggest lesson, I think, is probably that that we have free will to take actions, and so that means we create our own reality on Earth, and so we can never sort of claim to be victims or claim that the universe or some God is making it hard for us or visiting us with tragedy or taking away the good times. So things that happen to you aren't sort of foisted on you by other things. What happens in your life is your creation in two senses. One is that you put yourself in this life before you were born. You stuck yourself in, be born in this place and be born to your parents and all the other, or most of the other major things in your life. So you chose those, and then the rest of your reality is created by how you react to the things that happen in your life. Whether they're planned in your life plan or not. So you can react positively to everything that you encounter, or you can react in a negative fashion, and that's how you sort of create your own reality through your reaction to these events, whether you planned them or not. And so that was a real eye opener. And so it just makes you when I go about my business every day now, I look at things differently, and no matter what happens, whether it's something good or more often you focus on things misfortune that happened to you, and you say to yourself, okay, I'm not really a victim. I can't blame anybody, and so there's a learning experience in this for me. And so I have to figure out what the lesson is that I wanted to learn from this, and I need to react in the right way. And the right way, of course, always is to react positively rather than with negative emotions. And that's difficult at times, but that's how you have to react. And the more positively you learn to react to the events in your life, the happier you're going to be. It's just like, do you see the glass as half full or half empty? Well, if you see it as half full all the time, every time you encounter a glass, you're going to be much happier than the other way. So that was the big eye opener for me. The big thing that's sort of a big change in my life is to try to look at things in that fashion, and also to understand ultimately that no matter which path you take or how you react or what you do here, you can't become lost or go wrong. You're always going to end up back in the wonder and the beauty of the spirit side, where you can sort of evaluate what you did, and you can always decide to come back and try again. So it's nothing here that happens here is for keeps. I mean, everyone goes back to the same place, and so it's not the end of the world if you mess up here, or you think you've messed up, because you can always, if you can't fix it up in this life, you can come back in another life and keep on trying.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thank you, Pam, for being on as always. And
you're so welcome. It was so interesting. Thank you so much to Garnet Schulhauser. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, too. I enjoyed being on your show, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right, let's get those website links out. Make sure, everybody, if you haven't had a chance to read the book, to go out and pick up Dancing on a Stamp. You can get it in pretty much any place that you find books. I usually get all my stuff off of Amazon, but that's just me. The other websites are www.dancingonastamp.com. You can get them on Facebook at Dancing on a Stamp or YouTube at GarnetSchulhauser. And I want to thank both of you for being on the show and let everybody know we are listening to Spiritual Connections Radio. You can find out more about this show and get this is available for replay in a few minutes. And anytime you want to go back to get it, you can download it, iPod, iTunes, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mr. Schulhauser. Garnet.
You're welcome, and good
night,
night,
everybody. Thanks for listening.